Today on Locked On Phoenix Suns, your 2024 Media Day reaction, a little motivation, a lot of three-point talk, and the value of Tyus Jones all coming up next.
You are Locked On Suns, your daily Phoenix Suns podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back into Locked On Suns. I'm Brendon, Kleen, a staff writer at Awful Announcing and a credentialed Suns media member. Thank you for making Locked On Suns your first listen here on this Tuesday. Welcome to October, the best basketball month there is. I guess June. We get the finals, but I like October. Don't forget, Locked On Suns, free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. So if you have not done so already, click that follow or subscribe button to join thousands of other Suns fans and become an everydayer. Get locked on to the Phoenix Suns right here each and every day. Today's episode, guys, brought to you by the FanDuel Sportsbook. You can start the season, basketball, football, either one, with a big return on FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and you'll get $200 guaranteed in bonus bets to get started. Visit FanDuel.com to take advantage. Joining me, as always, the executive producer of The Drive on Fox Sports 910 from the wonderful West Valley. How are we feeling on this first day of October? Ben Garcia.
So good. I'm here to bring the energy to the show. You have 2 sins committed on the pod, and we're not even 2 minutes in. One,
what did I do?
You said that the best month of basketball is either October or June. It is clearly April or May, but we'll let that one slide. What I won't let you slide, though, is I know for sure now we both have a shirt, and we could have
They smell bad.
They smell bad. They
always smell bad. My wife and I always joke because I'll always try to nab her one of the giveaway ones, like when they give them to the fans, because she'll just sleep in them. They're just big whatever t-shirts. Yeah. And it's like you have to wash those things. They smell like vinegar. I don't know why. Smell bad.
I just did it because I thought it'd be a good bit, but you absolutely are right. It does smell bad. I have a buddy that does like the Suns promotions. So whenever I go, he would just come over and hand me a couple of shirts.
You got to hook up.
And I do the same thing.
I have to prowl after the fact and like try to see if anybody left it in their popcorn on the ground or whatever and see what I can take. But yeah, man, we had media day today. We were both there in person at Footprint Center. We got a lot to react to from everything we heard. And here's where I want to start. This was my most big picture, most specific takeaway from all of this quotables and thoughts and comments and questions. You hear a lot at Media Day, but it was this, Ben. This is the first preseason, first training camp in a long time. Honestly, you could tell me since they got good in the bubble, since they got good when Monty got hired, that I really felt a sense of purpose from this team, from this group, to change and improve. There was no what worked for us last year, let's tweak it and tune it up. There was no Katie and Brad are here, let's go. I think everybody, even guys that were new to this team, sat there and basically said, we got to get to work. We got to change, adapt, improve, and get to work.
1,000%. I had the same idea you did. And we'll get to this later, everyone just seemed a little bit lighter this time around. Like the whole world wasn't on their shoulders. Maybe that's because they are kind of the team that everyone has kind of counted out. The only thing, and it right away perked my ears up, was Matt Ishbia had touted a few times, well, we won 49 games last year. Like, Matt, that is not good enough. That's not good enough. 49 wins is clearly not good enough. But other than that, and the fact that Kevin Durant is just very openly, he just hates everyone in the media. You could tell he was up there due to obligation, but I mean, I can't blame him.
He Marshawn Lynched it. Yeah.
Oh, he Marshawn Lynched it. As soon as he walked up there, I couldn't help but kind of giggle to myself because I was like, I don't blame him. I don't want to answer questions for a bunch of bozos like us, but it was kind of funny as soon as he walked out there. But other than that, I was pleasantly surprised by some of the takeaways that they had said. Matt Ishbia, Barlstein, James Jones. I think everyone, it's the first day. They kind of have the answers to the test, but they didn't blow it. I actually thought that they instilled some real optimism in this Suns season to where, Brendon, they're sucking me back in, and I need you to pull me out. I need you to pull me out.
I did find myself saying to Brandon Duenas, who used to be on the show once a week, when he was there, and we were talking after, and I was like, this should be a more enjoyable season to be around, to watch, to consume, to talk about, to think about, to cover, blah, blah, blah. But then I realized that I literally said that exact same thing heading into last season, and I was absolutely wrong. So maybe I just say that every year, and I do drink the Kool-Aid a little bit. But I think it's proving the point, or the I guess like the hypothesis that I had, which is that there's a relief if you can stomach it, not let it beat you into the ground, take the requisite steps from a roster standpoint and from a internal growth standpoint and an evolution standpoint to overcome it. There's something a little nice from having no expectations placed on you. It's kind of a nice spot to be in if you can actually be an adult and handle it.
Yeah, and there was another thing, too, that I really appreciated from the Suns. And this is something that I felt like we didn't get all the time with Matt Ishbia, and this is what I mean. He's just going to continue to evolve and be a better owner. That's why I didn't kill him for it, because he's a new owner. He's still figuring it out. The Arizona Cardinals, especially their head coach, Jonathan Gannon, lie to the media a lot. I never know what's coming out of the mouth of Torey Lovello and the Arizona Diamondbacks half the time. Matt Ishbia and Mike Budenholzer, specifically, I guess I should say Mike Budenholzer, the media were asking questions for things such as Nurkic, and he's like, yep, no, that's exactly what we're doing. Or Matt Ishbia saying, oh, no, we're not going to stop spending money. If we have a clear direction, this is where we're going. I appreciated that honesty from them. Truly, I did.
I think it speaks to what you and I hoped would be the case as we've been previewing it the past couple of weeks, right? Is that there is just a level of accountability, and there's no fall guy anymore. I think that you just heard a lot of that, people just taking ownership of what was going to need to happen. And I think, again, that's kind of the bad side. Like, the good side of getting swept and getting your you-know-what handed to you is that you can come into the next season and no one thinks you're going to do anything, and it's all uphill from there. But the bad side is kind of like everybody has to sit there and look themselves in the face, and there's no, this thing was the cause. It's like, yeah, we all sucked. You don't get swept unless every single player on the court is bad. And that's what they all kind of have to own, I think, and you heard it.
Yeah, just as we're kind of overviewing all of this really quickly, like I had said, it just felt like everyone seemed a little bit lighter. It seemed a little bit more playful. It didn't seem like it was, if it's not championship or bust, people are going to be rioting in the streets. Which player did you think looked the most relieved for all the moves they made this offseason? Was there a certain one in particular? Because I got one. I thought it stuck out like a sore thumb.
Give me yours.
I think Bradley Beal just looked really happy. And no one is more happier than Bradley Beal to have Tyus Jones here. And to Bradley Beal's credit, someone, I forgot who it was, alluded to this idea. No one wanted to ask the bench question, and no one did. But someone said, would you be willing to do anything to help this team win? Whatever that may be, to help the team. He's like, yep. Betterment of the team, willing to do all of it. No one followed it up with, what about the bench? What about not playing in a game? Whatever it is.
Yeah, that question was, I think, specifically, he talked about that he wasn't going to have to be defending bigger guys anymore, wasn't going to have to be playmaking, and then they were kind of like, well, would you do it again type of thing, I think was kind of where that one was leaning, yeah.
And it just kind of felt like with Bradley Beal, he's like, yes, I'll still do anything that I need to do. But he had mentioned, it was like his first answer. He was like, I get to go back to being a combo guard, which is what I did. I think he said for the first 10 years of his career. And that just kind of opened up my eyes a bit for him, where it's like, oh my gosh, we talked about all this stuff with Bradley Beal. As long as the guy stays healthy going into the season, This guy, man, maybe this guy really is the limit, and I'm going to look really stupid forever thinking about sending this guy to the bench, which I'm okay with. I'll admit when I'm wrong. I'll gladly admit when I'm wrong. But it just felt like Bradley Beal seemed really light on his feet, and I really appreciated that. It didn't seem like that he felt the pressure.
Yeah, I think Brad's a super genuine guy. I think if you really watch him in the media, like me getting fortunate enough to cover at you this year, he just comes across, he's not going to BS you. You know what I mean? I think he got into it a little bit with the Frank stuff last year because it was very clear he did not like Frank Vogel, and then he would get asked about it, and he kind of had to tiptoe around that. It's fine. But yeah, I think that's a great answer, and probably the guy who should be the most relieved. He was probably the guy most twisted into a pretzel in terms of his role last year, and he's going to get out of that. But in general, I think that you saw that lightness, I guess you would say, and just I think a purpose. So let's talk about some of the more specific things that we did here. Three-pointers. I think a lot of talk about Tyus Jones I want to dive into. And some of the more temperamental things that Ben and I were kind of talking about there, I do want to circle back on. We'll get into all of it next. First, today's show brought to you by the FanDuel Sportsbook, America's #1 sportsbook. NFL fans, start the season with a big return on FanDuel, so when you get that hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Let's see what we have here. WNBA playoffs. Game 2s on Tuesday night. The Liberty are 3.5-point home favorites. The Lynx are 5-point home favorites. I expect both of those series to be close every night, so maybe that's a fun one. We got week 3. The Cardinals are 7.5-point dogs. Maybe just bet on them to lose and just feel better when it happens.
Make it 21. Make it just 21-point dogs.
Maybe you're a big Brock Purdy fan. I don't know. We'll see. But start it all off at FanDuel.com. Get those $200 in bonus bets. Guaranteed, no matter what. Keeping the show rolling, Ben. Let's talk about three-pointers. Everybody talked about three-pointers. Now, the media kind of forced them to because the question kept coming up. But so, I think, did Bud. I think Bud forced everybody to talk about threes because he emphasized it off the top. And it's clear that he's been emphasizing it before they ever set foot on that stage, that it has been a legitimate emphasis and focus since he took this job, having maybe some difficult or, straightforward conversations with the players. Brad mentioned that he sat him down and just showed him tape of a bunch of times where he passed up good threes for worse twos and turnovers. I think anyone who was sitting there crossing their fingers all summer that this was going to happen and this team was going to learn from last year, you got to be ecstatic at what we heard today.
It just kind of goes back to my point before. I really appreciated the honesty. They had every right to go up there and say, I don't know about the Yusuf Nurkic questions, or I don't know about the three-pointer questions. And I wouldn't have gotten mad at them. It's a game planning, gamesmanship, whatever. Instead, and it kind of shows why I am kind of excited. I got a little pep in my step for the Phoenix Suns is they have a plan, and they're willing to have dummies like me on this show come out here and say right now, the fact that they reiterated so many times that they're going to shoot as many threes as they can, or they're going to get up more, they have showed us what their plan is immediately to start the season, to the point where in the first 10 games of the season, if I don't see those numbers go up, I'm immediately going to say, Budenholzer, what are we doing? You said you were going to do this. You're clearly not doing it. I need to at least see an attempt at the plan that you were putting forth to us. And I really appreciated that. It wasn't just a, we're going to do this, but we're not going to tell anyone about it. It was, hold us accountable. We're telling you we're going to do this. And if we don't do it, you have every right to be frustrated. And that's what I'm going to think. I have an idea what the Suns offense is going to look like now, to an extent. And I expect that to kind of come to fruition. Did you have the same reaction?
Yeah, I think Grayson was pretty honest about it, right? He said the best teams in the NBA are all, the champions of the past few years are all top 1, 2, 3. Although I would say Denver's an exception to that, but whatever. Unless you have Nikola Jokic, I guess the rule stands. And honestly, so you and I both studied journalism in college, Ben. I think since then I've gotten a PhD in James Jones speak. And you gotta, at a certain point, it does take some linguistics, some studying, some looking below the surface there. And one of the things that really stuck out to me, by the way, I haven't studied it well enough to get a good answer to my question. He talked his way right around my question about the mid-prime veterans today, which shout out to James for that. But he said about threes, and I thought this was really telling. Too many possessions last season ended late in the clock, right? He said that the way that the offensive system was built, even if it worked at times, it did not create the ability to, what was one of Monty's favorite Montyisms, good to great, right? Paint to great. You hear a lot of coaches say that now, but Monty was big on it. 0.5, make quick decisions, get the ball moving so that if you get a good shot, you can eventually get a great shot. And that wasn't even possible for this Suns team last year, the way that James Jones was putting it. Because they just didn't have enough of that penetration. They didn't have enough players who were breaking down the defense to set up other players to end up being the ones to score. And that he feels a lot better about their ability to do that this year, whether that's because of Tyus Jones or just, frankly, reading between the lines, getting rid of Kevin Young and Frank Vogel, right? So getting up the court faster. So even if you do run a pretty elaborate set, you're doing it with 18 seconds left on the clock instead of 13. I think that was a pretty honest statement of a more specific reason why they weren't getting shots up last year rather than, oh, they all prefer mid-rangers. It's like, yes, but also you're going to have to do things differently, and I thought that was a great example.
And I'm sure you caught this, but the very first person that spoke was Matt Ishbia, and he immediately had to kind of backtrack on his words about Frank Vogel, where he was basically saying, we have a great coach now. And then he goes, well, I kind of have to say Frank Vogel was a great coach. And he kind of changed his wording. Not kind of. He did change his wording to, we have a coach now that better fits us. They were very honest about that. And I thought that was another thing that became abundantly clear, which was, hey, yeah, sure, there were some issues. There were injuries, communication. These guys didn't know how to really play with each other yet. But the main issue with our offense started at the top of Frank Vogel. And they wanted to get a guy in that can just change things up. And we saw that with Budenholzer. And again, man, I really just didn't expect that kind of transparency. Of course, there was a ton of fluff in between, questions that people just were trying to write their stories.
They could call them Fluff Day instead of Media Day.
Yeah, exactly. But I did appreciate a lot of the honesty when it came to the 3-point shooting. That team it seems like to me they're aiming to be a top 3 team shooting the ball. And I really loved Bradley Beal basically saying, Mike Budenholzer is so big on this. He brought me to his office 2 days ago and basically roasted me about turning over the basketball and taking or passing up open threes for covered twos. So I appreciated that insight. It shows me that Budenholzer clearly is trying to nail this down.
Yeah, it's not just, right, there's a difference between playing to your best player's strengths and letting them shoot themselves in the foot, right? It's like, that's what a coach is for. Players might think their strength is one thing, but, well, hey, there's also 5 of them on the court together, so what one player thinks is his strength might not complement the other players. And at the end of the day, you're also competing against the other 5 dudes. Like, it sounds very obvious and basic when I say it that way, but I think too often last season we just saw a bunch of cooks in the kitchen who were not making the same recipe, right? And I think Bud is going to be able to put them on. But let's get to, I think, the most transparent and direct comment that we heard about the 3-point shooting, which was about Yusuf Nurkic, right? A question that for a lot of other coaches or in a lot of other media days gets asked and glossed over. It is very fluffed, right? It is, yeah, we're looking forward to see how he can evolve his game. We're optimistic, blah, blah, blah. In this case, Bud said, yeah, I told him to work on threes. He's got to take them this season, and it's going to be a big part of what we want him to do. I mean, that just got rid of that talking point right away, something we've wondered about all summer. The answer is yes. Yusuf Nurkic will be taking threes.
I think it also shows you Yusuf Nurkic is not going anywhere. They have big plans for this guy to become what is the next Brook Lopez. Now, we can get into if we believe that that's going to be a successful mission. I'm still really skeptical about that. But again, it was just one of those things where someone raised their hand, asked it, and I was kind of a question is this? No, Budenholzer. And Budenholzer was like, nope, I'm aware of it. I've seen the videos. Like, legitimately said, I've seen the videos. Yeah, I asked him to do that. It shows, again, this is the plan for the Suns. We're going to shoot a bunch of threes, and we're basically flipping our entire offense on its head. Do you have any concerns? Not just with the Yusuf Nurkic becoming the next Brook Lopez, which I think we're both kind of skeptical on. Do you have any concerns with the fact that this offense is kind of getting turned on its head, even though Bradley Beal still said, we're still going to take some twos. We know what we do well. Book and KD shoot at like a 60% clip, but we are changing things. Do you think there's a point to changing too much in just one season?
No, I don't, because I think that it's going to be still relatively simple, even if it's different, right? So I still think a lot of the principles that you're going to see Bud implement are playing quicker. Probably you'll see more pick and roll, more just traditional pick and roll, more direct actions between two of the three best players, two of the big three or all three of the big three being involved in an action together. That's one of the things you can do, right? I mean, the thing with Nurkic is that the issue that they kept running up against is if you're not going to use him as a playmaker, what else will he do? He's not an athletic finisher. He's not, you can't really put guys in the dunker spot as offensive rebounders anymore. It's not efficient enough. He can't shoot threes. What can he do? You had to put the ball in his hands. But if they're going to empower him to take threes, whether that's standing in the corner as a guy to space, whether that is on the trail, if you're pushing the ball in transition, there's a lot of ways that I could see it happening. That allows then for the best players, Book, Durant, and Beal, to work together on the court more, rather than always having to have Nurkic be involved, which was something that it was a good, but it was also at times a bad for them. That's part of the I think the trickle down of once Nurk is just standing over there and maybe catching and shooting, that actually can help to make the other guys better in addition to just having more space.
Do you think, because we've been on the topics of trades before, do you think, because to me, I kind of read it as, oh, this guy's not getting traded. He's too big a part of their plans. And then it hit me. What if it doesn't work out?
Yeah,
and what if
that's what I was just going to say.
And what if they're so hell-bent? Would they trade him? If
he's
it
not
doesn't
getting traded
work out?
tomorrow, right? That we can say. So, okay.
It's not happening.
They have big plans for him in October. They have big plans for him in November. I mean, this is another thing that he said, right, was that he did shoot threes in the first half of last year. We all remember it. A lot of them clanked off the backboard, but they went up, and he was asked, why'd you stop taking them? And he basically was like, ask Frank. I don't know. You know what I mean? And so, okay, yes, that's fair, but also, he wasn't making them. So what if the same thing happens this year and he puts up 2, 3, 4 a game and he makes 25%? I mean, you can't just keep trying that. So that's my question. But yeah, I mean, we've talked about it all season preview here as we've been doing that in this month of September. A lot of this is going to be predicated on what works early on, and then how do they make adjustments and what do they look at by the time the trade deadline comes. So clearly they have a plan. I think it's great that Bud, whether you're talking about Beal or Nurk or any of these other guys, Allen gaining weight, which we didn't hit on really, that they obviously, that he's been coaching since he got this job. He didn't just show up yesterday, which I do think some coaches are like, okay, it's training camp time, let's get to work. Bud wasn't like that, but it all has to still actually pan out the way that he hopes. All right, let's talk about Tyus Jones. Everybody seems thrilled to have the point guard in the Valley. What did we hear on that end of things, and how will that change this team? Coming up next. All right, closing out the show, Ben, let's roll through the Tyus side of things. You mentioned Beal's very clear relief about this, but I was surprised the extent to which they are empowering Tyus. And I guess my question to you is, how much of that is still the honeymoon phase of wanting to butter him up for choosing Phoenix? And how much of that is they actually think he is going to be the key to unlocking everything?
It was just a lot of honesty. Matt Ishbia, I'm not sure if he was asked this. I think he just said this on his own. But he goes, we thought we had no chance at Tyus. None whatsoever. But even if there's a 1% chance, we were going to reach out to him. And just right then, right there, again, just another credit to Ishbia, where he's like, even though there's a 1% chance, we're going to do it. What if they don't reach out to him because they just assume it's a no? Just good business for this team. And yes, you were right. They did kind of pump him up a lot. And the two guys who were the happiest, more so when the other was Bradley Beal, they are going to clearly use Ty. It's almost like if it doesn't work out and someone goes to the bench, it's almost certainly not Tyus Jones. That's how empowered he was. He felt more like if you were just coming up with a big three, Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, Bradley Beal, right? That's what everyone was calling him today.
Yeah.
They were treating Tyus Jones like the third member of the big three, and even Bradley Beal was okay with it. And everyone kept on mentioning, it was almost like they were discrediting. I think it was Dwayne Rankin of the Arizona Republic had asked, do you have any worries about a three-guard system? They were like, worries? They almost treated it like it was a crazy question. So, yeah, to your point, they've empowered him a ton, and to the point where it truly felt like it was KD Booker Jones Beal. Like that's where it felt like the pecking order was in this. So is that the same reaction you had?
Yeah, yes, based on how they talked about it. I mean, with all due respect, that it's like they got Chris Paul again in a lot of ways, which is why I'm kind of like I'm kind of like, okay, it's a coup to get him. It landed in your laps. You weren't expecting it. He'll make the team better. But I guess it's just one of those things where expectations versus reality, fluff day versus, game 33 is what we heard today, an accurate representation of how involved and important a part of this team that he's actually going to be? Or is it just like, we got our guy, hell yeah, let's talk it up? And I mean, there's probably not a specific answer, but one of the things that I wanted to jump to on the topic of Tyus as well, though, as I bust out my PhD in James Jones speak again here, Ben, is he broke the point guard thing down in a pretty interesting way from the standpoint of the big three and how uncomfortable they may have been last year. I don't know if you caught this the same way that I did, but he pointed out how there's a trust, and I asked Tyus about this, and he just said it was really awesome to have this responsibility to step in and be this for the team. But the question, or the way that James Jones basically put it was, even though they're all great players, their job had never been to set each other up, to be that type of primary playmaker. And that there's a trust factor just from the presence of Tyus Jones, knowing that that's what he does best, that allows you, even if he does make mistakes, even if his judgment's not always perfect, even, he's the assist to turnover god, but on the off chance he makes a few mistakes, there's just going to be a trust that the other players, including the great legendary guys on this team, place in him that they just didn't have in each other last year, despite the talent that they all have. And I thought that was a really smart way of putting it from James Jones' standpoint, that it's less about Book can't play point guard, Beal can't play point guard, and more, how do you get everybody to gel beyond the, who can make an entry pass, but just from a mindset and a leadership and a hierarchy standpoint, that he's really optimistic that everything just kind of settles in when you have somebody on the court who says, it's my job to set you up. Of course I'm going to do it. You don't have to worry. And I think that will go a long way, and I really do agree with it.
I don't think the Suns have had a guy, when you put it like that, that's job who's known is just to set up people since Ricky Rubio. I don't even think Chris Paul was like that. Chris Paul still felt an ability to have to take over late in games. And it's almost like, I mean, I think Tyus Jones is better than Ricky Rubio. If you add a guy like, I think it's close, but whatever. It's not something I really, I'm not trying to debate it, but it's just something where like,
no, I'm saying even putting it that way is a testament to how good Tyus is, because they had to spend $15 million to go get Ricky, and they just got this guy for a minimum. So
there was another thing as well where James Jones had said one thing that's going to make the offense flow even better, and I'm paraphrasing, of course, is everyone is a pass away from a great shooter, basically is what he said. And I didn't really think of it like that, where can Tyus Jones' ability to distribute the ball be infectious to other players? Because Chris Paul's was. Chris Paul, I still remember the clip where I believe it was in the finals where they're swung around the ball 15 different times, then ended up getting an and one with DeAndre Ayton at the bucket. Like, can Tyus Jones be so good on the court that it's infectious to other people to want to share the ball, like to want to see other people get theirs? I know that people sometimes say, like, you're overblowing the Tyus Jones signing because last year happened and we're all scarred from that, and Yuta Watanabe and Keita Bates-Diop and Chimezie Metu. Tyus Jones is better than all of those players. All of them. Eric Gordon, all of them. So there is a higher level of expectation here from us. I don't think we're blowing smoke. I think it's not only just us getting excited about it. What was so prevalent and so, I don't know, just solidified the way I was feeling is that it felt like the players felt that way too. And ultimately, at the end of the day, Brendon, it's all that matters.
Yeah. I think the way I would put it is he's going to have as big of an impact as he can earn. It's all there for him. You know what I mean? Maybe there's a world where his minutes dwindle over the course of the season. Maybe he doesn't close every game. Maybe by the playoffs, he's a smaller part of the rotation, even if he's still starting. That's a little pessimistic, but it's possible. But I think that there's an equally big, if not bigger, chance that he's 35 minutes a night and he's a huge part of this team. You know, just from how they're talking about it and how much they seem to buy into it. But I like the way you put it. I mean, yeah, the infectiousness of it, I think, is definitely there. And I think the pace he emphasized a ton, which was something that you and I kind of wondered about, you know, and Bud talked about it in the Q&A that we talked about on Monday's show. So, yeah, I mean, them wanting it as badly as they clearly did was the part we didn't know before today, right? The players. We didn't know that Beal and Book, and I didn't hear KD necessarily talk about Tyus too much, but the fact that the players, and like Grayson just being like, yeah, I'll go to the bench. Let's get my guy in here.
It's a really good point. It's a really good point you made that we're about to end the show on and didn't talk about it. Someone, I think it was Kellen Olson, asked, you've never been a bench player. You're just cool with doing that now? And he's like, for basically a paraphrasing, of course, this is basically what he said. For Tyus Jones, yep, I'll head right to the bench. And I was like, what is this guy just, I don't know, everyone's savior at this point? Like, that's how he was treated. I mean, the number one thing was how much they propped up Tyus Jones, which was almost like, am I downplaying Tyus Jones too much? Because that's how hyped up they are. And then the second thing, of course, was the Yusuf Nurkic stuff, but just interesting.
Taking off my headphones because they died, but I can hear you. We're going to end the show there. Hit subscribe or follow if you have not already. Become an everydayer. We got so much to talk about. Ben and I were just wondering when the first preseason game is because we kind of forgot. It's on Sunday of this week. So next Monday, you'll get a show about real NBA basketball. Suns, Lakers to kick off the preseason here in the Valley. Get hyped. We'll talk to you tomorrow.